Okay, I wanted to remarkable Rav Dessler with you. Rav Dessler is not in the Sefer Milchem Eliyahu. It's in the Sefer just put out recently called Machsheves Eliyahu, by Kol on Staten Island, which we got a hold of a lot of, I guess, letters and other writings that Rav Dessler left behind. And in his writing on the Churban, Rav Dessler says a remarkable thing. This is just a part of the piece, not the entire piece, but he says that we have to understand that anything in this world can be used for good and for bad. And every situation in this world has a possible lesson which is positive, possible lesson which is negative, possible approach which is positive, possible approach which is negative. And therefore, he says here, we have to know. The Churban the Beis Hamikdash. No, it's not working again. The Churban Beis Hamikdash can bring us to a something which is better or something worse. This has to do with our free choice, based on our will and our perspective, which is a remarkable statement. Rav Dessler says, again, that the Churban Beis Hamikdash can either make us better or worse. Now, this is amazing because how can we possibly think of the Churban Beis Hamikdash as something which is better for us? Churban Beis Hamikdash, the destruction of Beis Hamikdash, seems to be something which is uniformly terrible, horrible. And that's the conventional understanding. So, of course, we have to understand what he's saying here. He continues. In Beis Hamikdash, the Beis Hamikdash continued to exist. We're not a free will, which is again a remarkable statement. What does it mean we wouldn't have free will if the Beis Hamikdash existed? Kodesh Baruch Hu gives us all the situations that which are necessary for us, to free will, according to our level. Unintelligible. Okay, therefore, Churban Beis Hamikdash melamedu ma'amiko sonu. The Churban Beis Hamikdash teaches us and ma'amido sonu and sets us up madrega ba'anachnu nitzoyim in the level which we find ourselves. Uvav is manis at the same time raising Yisayan. It's a test. If we're going to do that which is good for us or the opposite. So Dessler says here again this fundamental concept, which is a shocking one, which is that the Churban Beis Hamikdash can be for us a positive thing in some sense, which he doesn't explain. Let's finish with this piece, and then we'll come back and try and explain a little bit more to what he says in the next part of the piece. Over here now, I guess. Okay, it says a mitzvah shall availus al Churban Beis Hamikdash b'Tishbav, the mitzvah of availus and the instruction Beis Hamikdash in Tishbav, and then rak availus b'chi etzav yagono avarim before Hashem. It's not just a mitzvah of mourning, of anguish, of sadness on the great past which we had. We have to understand about ourselves that we're not worthy of having the Beis Hamikdash rebuilt for us. Chazal say, "Kol dosh lo nivneh Beis Hamikdash b'yomav." Any generation which the Beis Hamikdash is not rebuilt, kilu nechra b'yomav, as if it's destroyed in its days. So this, okay, that's obvious. That makes sense. We have to understand if we don't have the Beis Hamikdash, it's as if we're responsible for destroying it, because any generation which is not rebuilt, it's as if that generation destroyed it. This is proves to us and teaches us why are we in Golus? Because we're not suitable for have the Beis Hamikdash rebuilt for us. If we were prepared and worthy of this, Beis Hamikdash would be built for us fresh as it was once stood for us. The mourning, while it's on the present and the pain of the present. And this certainly we have to be in anguish and we have to cry. So says Rav Dessler, and this is the beginning of understanding what he said before, that the Beis Hamikdash not being present teaches us that we're doing the wrong thing. Had we had the Beis Hamikdash, we would not necessarily realize we were doing the wrong thing, and it would be bad for us. And the person whoever wrote the footnotes references a chapter in Yirmiyahu. The chapter in Yirmiyahu I want to share with you now, which it says, this is English translation, Yirmiyahu 7, God, the Lord of hosts, God Israel, said, mend your ways and deeds, and I will settle you in this place. Don't put your trust in vanity, saying, these buildings are God's temple, God's temple, God's temple. Echal Hashem, Echal Hashem, Echal Hashem, Haman. For if you mend your ways and deeds, if you execute justice between one man and another, if you do not oppress the stranger, orphan, or widow, if you do not spill innocent blood in this place, if you do not follow other gods to your detriment, then I will settle you in this place in the land to which I gave your ancestors for all time. But if you put your trust in nonsense, to no avail. We steal, murder, commit adultery, swear falsely, offer incense to Baal, follow other gods whom you do not know, and then come and stand before this temple, which bears my name, and say, we are saved, only to commit all these abominations? You consider this temple which bears my name a den of lawbreakers? Indeed, I have said this, says God. And then he says, I'm going to show the Beis Hamikdash. So what's Yirmiyahu Navi saying? Yirmiyahu Navi is saying that if a person has a Heichal Hashem, if Am Yisrael has Heichal Hashem, has the Beis Hamikdash, very often what happens is that they say, we're not doing anything wrong. We have the Beis Hamikdash. How can we possibly do anything wrong? The flip side is that the Beis Hamikdash is never going to be destroyed. So we always have the Beis Hamikdash in order to atone for our sins. We can always do whatever we want and be a den of lawbreakers in the Beis Hamikdash, bringing karbanos in order to atone for them. So the Beis Hamikdash is a negative in this, says Yirmiyahu Navi. If I give you you're using Beis Hamikdash as a tool to hide your averos, as a tool to ignore your averos. You're saying, we have the Beis Hamikdash, it atones for us. In the Beis Hamikdash, it indicates we're good people. So therefore, what else do we have to do? Everything seems fine and dandy. So Kodesh Baruch Hu takes away the Beis Hamikdash for us and tells us, you know what? He says, you're not doing well. And you have to be aware of that. And you have to confront that problem which you have. And the Menak of the Beis Hamikdash is a challenge to us. Now, that challenge is very, very, very important to understand even further and even deeper than we've done till now. The challenge of not having Beis Hamikdash means that we're confronted for most of our history with the challenge of not having a Beis Hamikdash, because we had a Beis Hamikdash for far fewer years of existence than the years that we have not had a Beis Hamikdash. So how do we understand that? What does the Beis Hamikdash do for us? So it's a fundamental principle which the Sridei Eish says, which is an amazing concept. Sridei Eish says, and I'm paraphrasing because I couldn't find the source. I wrote it down last year, the year before, and I didn't write down where the source is. Sridei Eish says, Sridei Eish was a great Michael Yaakov Weinberg, a great thinker of the 20th century, who was a Rosh Hashiv in Berlin before the Holocaust, and he was in the Warsaw Ghetto, and he was able to get out of the Warsaw Ghetto, and he was later lived in Montreal, Switzerland for the rest of his life. He said that Am Yisrael is a nation of rugged individualists. And the only thing which unites Am Yisrael, because we are such rugged individualists, is the Beis Hamikdash. That's it. Without the Beis Hamikdash, every Jew is like the famous quip that the Truman said to Ben Gurion, how difficult it is to be a president of several hundred million Americans, and how Ben Gurion said back to him how difficult it is to be a prime minister of 600,000 prime ministers. Every Jew is a prime minister. Every Jew is a rugged individualist. And the only thing which unites us is the Beis Hamikdash. But the Beis Hamikdash uniting us can unite us when it exists, and can unite us even in Avelus, when it doesn't exist. And that's the key to Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is the understanding that not just the existence of Beis Hamikdash unites us when we have it, which was great, but even now, when we don't have it, the Beis Hamikdash unites us in our Avelus over it. Am Yisrael has to look at the Beis Hamikdash and see, what are we missing? That is what we have to collectively focus on, and that's what's supposed to unite us and take us to the next stage, which is what to fix in Am Yisrael in order, perhaps someday, Halavai tomorrow, Halavai tonight, we should have the Beis Hamikdash back. But that's the key, Avelus and the Churban. I believe it's Napoleon who said, and we witnessed the Jews sitting in Avelus and Tisha B'Av, he said, such a nation it has inner strength. I don't remember the exact quote. I didn't look it up beforehand. But such a nation is very, very powerful inner strength, and such a nation is going to last for eternity because they continue to mourn over something which they lost a long time ago, and it's still as if it is in their lives today. There's a similar quote from Winston Churchill. He said that nations that went down fighting rose again, but those who surrendered uh, uh, tamely were finished. So, Amisol, we don't surrender tamely. What does it mean we don't surrender tamely? Of course, sometimes we fight. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to fight. But it means that we don't surrender to our fate and say we give up. No, we constantly mourn the Beis Hamikdash ki'ilu meso muto lefonav, as if the Beis Hamikdash is sitting in front of us, this desolate, not something in the past, but right now in front of us, being destroyed by Titus and burning in front of us. And many of the halachas of Tisha are constructed that way, that we should think of the Beis Hamikdash as if it's being destroyed now. So what is this supposed to challenge us to do? So I have here a few pages which I just saw this year, yesterday actually, the first time, from Viktor Frankl, and I found it very powerful. Everybody knows that Viktor Frankl went to the Holocaust and is a tremendous psychologist, philosopher, and wrote about how to deal with suffering. And then he says here, it says, the question can no longer be, what can I expect from life? But can now only be, what does life expect of me? What task in life is awaiting for me? Now, we also understand in the final analysis, the question of meaning of life is not asked in the right way. If asked the right way, it is generally asked, it is not, we are permitted to ask about the meanings of life. It is life that asks the questions, directs question at us. We are the ones who are questioned. We are the ones who must answer, must give answers to the constant hourly question of life, to essential life questions. Living itself means nothing other than being questioned. Our whole act of being is nothing more than responding to or being responsible toward life. Now, this actually the Kutzker said. The Kutzker said this in Parshas Kisavo. It says, "Uvo alecha kol habrachos elu b'sigucha, uvo alecha kol haklolos elu b'sigucha." All of these blessings will come to you, and they'll attain you. And all of these the curses will come to you, and they'll attain you. And b'sigucha is a strange word. What does it mean, b'sigucha? They will attain you. So the Kutzker gave a very short answer. And Kutzker said, it's Hazoivi Hasogas HaRavid Ala Rambam. It's like there's a certain book written, a famous classic book called the Hasogas HaRavid. The Rambam wrote his tremendous magnum opus, the Yad HaChazaka, all the halachas and Mishnah Torah, and the Ravid, who was a contemporary of the Rambam, wrote his complaints against the Rambam. He wrote his questions, his arguments, the disagreements, and he called that work, which he wrote, the Hasogas HaRavid, the complaints. The literally means the perceptions, the attainments of the Ravid. So what does it mean? The Hasogas HaRavid, what the Ravid understood from the Rambam, and he said, I'm asking you, why did you say this? I think you're wrong about this. I don't think that this is the way it should be. This is a question I have against you. It's a taina I have against you, a question I have against you. And so much of learning in the yeshiva world is comprised of trying to resolve the questions the Ravid asks on the Rambam. It's a huge amount of Talmudic material. It's just in trying to answer the questions the Ravid asks on the Rambam. So the idea is, says the Kutzker, all of the brachos and klolos are hasogas. They're tainas, they're questions, they're challenges. That the Ravid just like the Ravid challenged the Rambam, so too life challenges us. The brachos and the klolos, they're all challenges to us. And Hashem says to us through the klolos, he says, how are you going to respond to this challenge? That's what Viktor Frankl is saying here. Life is a series of questions. We find meaning in life by responding to those questions. And those questions, I'm going to show you a couple more sources from the same book. I think it's called Yes to Life, where he speaks about the suffering. Now, suffering gives meaning to our life. This is source number 2 from the book. He says, we give life meaning not only through our actions, but also through loving and find through suffering. Because how human beings deal with limitations and their possibilities regarding how it affects their actions and their ability to love, how to behave under these restrictions, the way in which they accept their suffering under such restrictions, in all of this, they still remain capable of fulfilling human values. So how we deal with difficulties truly shows who we are. And that too can enable us to live meaningfully. And we should not forget the sporting spirit, that uniquely human spirit. What do the athletes do but create difficulties for themselves so that they can grow through overcoming them? In general, of course, it's not advisable to create difficulties for himself. In general, suffering as of misfortune is only meaningful if this misfortune has come about through fate, and is thus unavoidable and escapable. That's fate, in other words. What happens to us can certainly be shaped in one way or another. There is no predicament which cannot be ennobled either by achievement or by endurance, said Gerber. That really is key to understanding the Korban. Our fate is Korban. No one of us can fix, how the Bible go together fix, but no one of us can fix the Korban. But each one of us has to address the Korban. Each one of us finds ourselves in a state of suffering, and I'm so collectively finds itself in a state of suffering. Akadosh Baruch says, I'm not necessarily giving you the answers. The answers maybe they'll come later, but I'll give you a lot of questions. And you have to address the questions. You have to find answers within yourself. You have to find what is it that I'm missing, what I have to fix in order that I can be able to go to the next stage, or to meet the challenge which life is imposing upon me, which the Churban is imposing on me. And Chazal say, there are remarkable statements of Chazal that says that the Talmud Bavli is superior to Talmud Yerushalmi because Machshachim Moshivayikim Seim Olam was written in darkness, as if among the dead of the world. That's the pasuk they quote. And Chazal say, Yotzet Tzadikim Hoba immediately b'Churbana Yotzim Yona. More tzaddikim, Yisrael produced more tzaddikim in the destruction than it did when the Beis Hamikdash was standing. These are very strange things, and they're counterintuitive. We don't obviously we can try and explain them and understand them, but more than understand them and explain them, we confront them. There are challenges which we have to confront and say, okay, we're in a state of adversity. How do we cope with this adversity? And coping with adversity is what gives life meaning, and what gives Am Yisrael's life meaning as well. And I think that's one of the understandings which is given in the famous question on Pesach. We say, so everybody knows the question is asked, what's the Vihi? What stood for us? Well, and there are many questions given, many answers given, dozens of answers. What the Vihi is, what stood for us? But I think one of the answers given is, what stood for us and our forefathers is each every generation we're persecuted. And the persecution is what gives Am Yisrael this challenge to which it responds, to which it creates and recreates and flourishes and finds meaning. And if we're all finding the meaning together, which is what that Beilus over the Churban is about, so we should all focus on what destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, so then it also gives us the power of unity, which sustains us through the goals and gives us the hope to get to the next stage. So in order to one more source from Viktor Frankl I want to show you, and then we'll go on to the next aspect, which is over here. Yeah. Says, if we summarize what we said about the meaning of life, we can conclude. It's interesting, at the top of the page, which I'm not doing here, he brings down Hillel, Imena, Nilamili, etc., which of course is a very powerful statement. Let's do it. Let's quote Hillel. It says, this matters if I do not do it, who else will do it? But if I only do it for me, what am I then? And if I do not do it now, then when will I do it? If not I, therein lies the uniqueness of every single person. If only for me, therein lies the worthlessness and meaninglessness of such uniqueness, unless it is a serving uniqueness. Every individual in Am Yisrael is important, but as a member of Am Yisrael. If not now, therein lies the uniqueness of every individual's situation. If we now summarize what we said about the meaning of life, we conclude life itself means being questioned, means answering. Each person must be responsible for their own existence. Life no longer appears to us as given, but as something given over to us. There's a task in every moment. This therefore means that it can only become more meaningful the more difficult it becomes. The athlete, the climber, actively seeks tasks, even creates the difficulties for himself. How delighted is that climber when he finds in a rock face another difficult and even more difficult variant of this task. It's an amazing statement, but it's very much like what Dessler said. Sometimes having the Beis Hamikdash is an impediment because then we rest on our laurels. The Churban drives us to greater challenges and greater accomplishments. And he says this fascinating thing. At this point, we must note, however, that religious people, their sense of life, and their understanding of being, distinguish themselves in that they go a step further than a person merely understands their life as a task. That they also experience the agency that gives them the task, or that sets them before the task, the divine being. In other words, religious people experience their life as a divine mission. Being in a state of Churban and a state of Yisurim and a state of difficulty, each one of us individually and collectively is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mission for us. Elsewhere in the book, that he says, most of life is suffering, and then it's punctuated by happiness. But you only get the happiness through the suffering and meeting the challenges which suffering imposes. And collectively, Am Yisrael goes through the suffering in order that we should meet the challenge and rise to the occasion. In this current war, now already it's gone awry, and I don't know what the future holds, and it's beyond me what's happening. But of course, it's an ongoing challenge. But early in the war, we saw how the adversity created achdus. We'd rather not have the adversity, but there was a tremendous unity which happened as a result of the adversity. We don't seek out the challenges, as Viktor Frankl said, but when they're there, we can very often see that they represent something, and something significant positive happens from them. Can we see how the cause and effect had to line up the way they did? No, that's not for us to know in this world. That's something which is revealed to us at the end of history, not during history. But we understand these are challenges which we have to meet. And so then we have to understand what are the challenges. And I want to show you something extremely depressing from the Maharsha. Maharsha lived in the 1500s. It's commenting in the Gemara on Shabbos, that 50 test in the base. And one of Shabbos 50 test gives us 8 reasons why the Yerushalayim was destroyed. And I'm just going to go through them quickly. And we're going to skip the psukim in the middle. It says, and the first one is Lo Char Yerushalayim Shvil Shel Lo Chichu Zeh Zeh. They didn't rebuke each other. And actually, that's not the first one. I see I left out some of them. Because the first one is that they were Mechal Shabbos. And the second one is that they didn't read Kriya Shema in the morning and at night. And the third one is that they didn't let the children learn when the children are supposed to learn properly. They used to, I guess, take them out of school for those reasons. And then it says that they treated people equally, as even though some people were greater, some people were lesser. They treated all equal status. They didn't give proper cover to the Gdolim. Then it says they revised Talmidei Chachamim, and then it's going on. We're running out of time, so therefore go quickly through it. And then it says that they lo chichu zeh zeh, didn't rebuke each other. And so Maharsha says, "B'nei rov avonos, all these averos, kimat kulam, all of them, in their generation." He says Yisurei Shabbos, very few people could keep Shabbos properly. It's the 1500s. He says every Motzei Shabbos, many of them get together and get drunk, and then they miss Kriya Shema the next morning. And then the kids spend too much time during Bein Hazmanim, during vacation periods, walking in the streets and wasting time. And he says, in our generation, there's so many people who think that they can be rabbis and they can be leaders, and they don't know anything. And then he says that nobody rebukes each other because everybody says, "Oh, I'm afraid of that person's honor. I don't rebuke him. I don't want to embarrass him." And people just denigrate others, Talmidei Chachamim, and they don't want to receive their rebuke. They put them down to their level. And the Viktor has a beautiful mashal. He says, "Why is the clock tower the highest tower in the town?" He says, because says no one people think it's because everybody needs to see the clock. He says, no, if the clock was down on ground level, everybody try and change the clock in order that it should be in sync with their own personal watch. So therefore, that's why the clock has to be above the rest of so nobody tries to change constantly trying to change the clock to do with their watch. And it's beautiful, mashal. And then he says that they're no more trustworthy person. People are constantly cheating each other, etc., etc. Now, this is the Maharsha writing in the 1500s. And then, so every Avera which existed at the time of the Churban, he says, exists today and still to be fixed. And it still challenged us today. And I think we're actually better off than with martial arts time. I think people don't make parties, Motzei Shabbos, get drunk, and mitzvah the next day. I think there's more Torah learned today than ever was learned before in Klal Yisrael's history. But that brings us to the other Gemara, Bamitzia, that Pehei, where it says, Amma of Doretz, why was the land destroyed? The land was destroyed because Lo Birchu B'Torah Tchila. Even if you're learning Torah, you have to make the bracha before you learn Torah with a special kavanah, with a special intent to appreciate the Torah you're learning. That when you say to learn Torah lishma, that our Torah should be learned for the right reasons, and we should enjoy learning, and should be the focal point of our lives. And I think that this all comes to the last keynote, which I only really noticed this year. It's a paradox. The last keynote says, Eli Tzion Barea, the Yitzhayin and the sea should continue more, like a woman who is in labor, keeps and a woman who's lost her husband every youth. It's a paradox. If a woman's in labor, she's giving birth. She's not a widow. If a woman's a widow who lost her husband a long time ago, so she's not giving birth. So, but why are we linking these two things together in the last keynote? I think the answer is a very obvious answer. The answer is that if we have the Abelus and Yerushalayim, and it's a focal point in our lives, and it's what unites us, and we think about it, and each one of us tries and find the challenge individually and collectively, the reason why they're suffering, then it's going to be like a woman giving birth, that there are going to be labor pangs. You can't separate the two. You can't have a productive pain unless you realize what you've lost. She remembers from what she had hundreds of years ago, in our case, thousands of years ago. And therefore, we try and get back to that. We try and get back to that connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our lives, individually, collectively, and the Kiddush Shem Shamayim, individually and collectively. That's supposed to be the Avelus of Yerushalayim, should be the catalyst for all that. And we're running out of time. And I don't have time and I certainly don't have the capacity to tell every individual what to fix in our own lives. But we saw Salanta said, the tshuva period doesn't begin at Rosh Chodesh Elul. The tshuva period begins with Avelus on Yerushalayim. Anybody who figures out why I'm an Avelus, why we're an Avelus, can see the simcha because he knows how to meet the suffering. And even if he doesn't see the full simcha of the beginning of Beis Hamikdash, he has the simcha of knowing I'm participating in rebuilding the Beis Hamikdash by being part and parcel of the Avelus, contemplating the Avelus, seeing what the Avelus challenges me and challenges Am Yisrael to do, and trying to build on that. And it is something which we have to hope. I'm afraid going to get cut off any moment. That's the way Zoom works. But every one of us, as Tisha B'Av is ebbing away, to try and think for ourselves and for Am Yisrael, and for ourselves as part of Am Yisrael. Because what we're missing, what we're lacking, maybe of some of the Averis which still exists back then, today we have to confront today. But remember, Averis and Yerushalayim is what unites us, what makes us even today one cohesive unit, because we all know something's missing. We all look forward to the Gilu Shechina, the revelation of the Shechina, of divine presence, which we lost, and we only have the remnant of the Kosel Ma'aravi, as Chazal say today, remnants, little bits. But also remember, in darkness, stars shine brighter. There's no light like the light, says the Zohar, which comes out of darkness. And we should be zeicher to find, we should merit to find the individual point of light which we represent, to make the collective light which Am Yisrael can represent, even the dark, even in Golus. And that way we take the Avelus over the Churban and make it a source of growth, a source of construction, or a source of uplifting ourselves, uplifting Klal Yisrael. So that, again, the Avelus Yerushalayim, remembering what we're lacking in the Beis Hamikdash, remembering that there was a Gilu Shechina and it's taken away. Divine presence is not clear, like what Chazon Ish says. There's no apikoros in our day and age. Because you only have an apikoros when people could see Nisim. When the Chanina B'Daitz could make vinegar turn into oil. When I saw heard Batsko, they heard voice from the Shemayim. Then you could have real apikoros. There's no real apikoros because nobody can real. There's no Gilu Shechina. That's what we're missing. We should all know how we can contribute to the Gilu Shechina, to reveal more Shechina, to make more Kiddush Hashem, and commit ourselves to making more Kiddush Hashem, to confronting challenges in a positive way, and to bring about the ultimate simcha, which comes with coming back after all of the accomplishment of Golus after accomplishing all the suffering, then we'll have the happiness of having found meaning in our lives. And each and every day we should find meaning in our lives in the light of what we're missing and the challenges we confront. And Hashem should help us to accomplish that. Thank you very much.